Welcome to the Nola Ro Experience Podcast. Raw, honest, relatable experiences that help us grow. Are you subscribed? If not, what are you waiting for? Go! And please, leave a review and help us grow while you're at it. Thank you.
On today's episode, we are going to be talking about anxiety with Sascha Jones and, of course, the SOA Q&A and today's happy habit. So, of course, we are on Zoom, which is a little bit unusual this season. We are not really talking with a lot of people on Zoom, but today we're doing that because Sascha is in Australia.
Hi, Nola.
How's the weather? You know what? Tell me something that's happening in Australia right now, either a current event or maybe something unusual.
What have we got that's unusual? Well, it's gotten cold. It's gotten cold. That's unusual. And we've had you've just come out of summer. What else? We've just had a change in government. We've had an election recently.
Okay.
So there's a couple of things. Yeah.
I find it very interesting that I'm talking to you from the past. You're in the future.
I know. We're that first country to hit, or first location, I think, Sydney, to hit New Year's.
I love it. So yeah. We are time talking.
We are.
Time travel talking. So anxiety. Could you please tell the people who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am an anxiety breakthrough coach, and I work with mumpreneurs, mostly women, driven women, spiritually motivated women, to help them get back their mojo. And I have been trained, my training comes from a few different modalities. So I work with a combination of neurotransformation therapy, which is essentially how we rewire our brain via the subconscious. And I also work as an integrative health coach, so our body systems and our health, and as a Reiki energy healer. And I sort of combine those with my clients. I'm a mum to two boys, partner, amazing human.
Yes, you are. And you know what? Amazing human brings me to asking, why do you do what you do? I ask everyone that because I always want to know what motivated you to even decide that, you know what, I am going to take on this really difficult thing that people are going through and help them tackle it.
Yeah, I've had my own journey with anxiety, chronic anxiety, with PTSD, with depression, and my own experience with that. And I have, and also burnout. And I want to help people. I want to be able to help people from my experience. I'm fascinated by human behavior and what makes us tick. And just really helping others to show up as their higher self and their happier self, and to have that quality of life that we all deserve. So that's
a good reason. That's a good reason. So anxiety, we touched on this a little bit when we talked last time, and I was telling you that word is, I don't know, is it being thrown around a lot when it shouldn't be? But before we even get into that part, what exactly is anxiety anyway?
So the definition is it is incessant worry or fear of the future. It's a fear-based emotion, fear of the future. It is a neurological and biochemical process that we go through, and it can range from there's a bunch of different types of anxiety, from sort of general anxiety through to phobias, through to OCD, through to selective mutism, which is when we don't speak. And we've got a part of our brain, the fight or flight response, which is when we are stressed. And as sort of ancient, primal humans, that was triggered when we perceived threat or danger. And when we were out of that danger, everything would sort of shut down. When we're out of that danger, it would switch off. And for various reasons, it doesn't switch off sometimes. And so that chronic state of anxiety is when that fight or flight is in constant, it's switched on. So that's when we sort of have that chronic anxiety and heightened. It's a state. It really is just a state, and we can choose to change our state. So, yeah.
Okay. So would you say, I wasn't planning on asking you this, but now you have me thinking.
Yeah.
Would you say that, I heard you say if you are in fight or flight mode consistently, I feel like that's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people. I think it's like 20, I was just looking at some stats and they vary. There's like 20% of the American population that have, of adults that have or are diagnosed with anxiety. And I think it's lower in children, but we live in a society or a culture that we're constantly switched on. You know, we're disconnected from ourselves, we're disconnected from nature and cycles and that communal way of living. And I think the disorders, my belief is that disorders, and there's a lot of thinking around it, come from that disconnection and that constant switch on, you know, for whatever reason, social media, all the, you know, sort of current events, current affairs, things that are going on. And a lot of us have it, you know, a lot of us are diagnosed or, you know, present with symptoms. But essentially, anxiety is a symptom, and it usually is something that's been manifested when we don't deal with root cause, or we don't get to the bottom of what it might be. And often, not always, that can be trauma or an event that's happened that we've emotionally reacted to, you know, in our past. And yeah, if we don't deal with our stuff, it will present as a disorder and affect our health and our quality of life generally.
Wow, that's really interesting. So I heard you mention that there are different types of anxiety. I would never have considered OCD to be a type of anxiety.
Well, it's a repetitive, like we have an inner dialogue, you know, we have thoughts which create our emotions, which create our behaviors and create our reality. And it's OCD is you know, it's a repetitive behavior that comes from a repetitive pattern in our brain. And that's essentially, you know, it can be fear-based, it can be triggered by fear. And it's a worry, you know, it's an incessant sort of worry. So it is a type of anxiety. It can be classed as that.
Okay, so I feel like this conversation can go so deep because
yeah.
As I hear you talk, so many questions are popping up, but I need to stay focused because listen, now I want to delve into OCD. Now I want to learn more about that. But what is another type of anxiety? You know what? Before I ask you that, I love that you said that anxiety is a symptom. It's not the actual core reason behind something. It's an indicator.
Yes. And we have these symptoms like, you know, certain illnesses, certain things that present to us, and often they come as small messages or they come as, you know, things that we tend to ignore in our busy lives. And when we don't address it or listen or tune in to what is really going on at a deeper level, you know, they will get stronger, and anxiety is one of those things. So it really is about going deeper and looking at root cause and what it is that maybe has sort of started this process, because it is a process. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So is this something that needs to be anxiety? Is it something that needs to be diagnosed by a professional? Or because I feel like so many people today are saying, I have anxiety, I have anxiety. I hear that so much. Is this something that can be self-diagnosed, or does it require a professional?
Well, I think, look, both. If we're in tune with ourselves and self-aware, we tend to know, and I believe that we all have, you know, innate physicians within, wise healers within. So we, you know, when we can tap into that, we can know when something is off. It's really knowing when something's not, you know, right, or we feel out of sorts, or there's sort of things that are showing up. You know, that self-awareness is something that we can work on. Also, you know, it's about going and getting help and finding support from the right person. And it can be misdiagnosed. You know, you just have to find whether it's the right GP or the right professional therapist, whatever it might be, to do it. But I think, my personal journey is that I was misdiagnosed. I was in September 11th years ago, 20 odd years ago, and I had PTSD, and it showed up at the time, and I had help with it straight after. And 20 years later, we had the bushfires here in Australia, and we were living very close, and we had to evacuate. And I had a re-trigger, and I actually went to an amazing psychiatrist here in Australia in Sydney, who helped me the first time around. And I was misdiagnosed as clinically depressed, and I was put on antidepressants. And, I sort of was starting my health coaching at the time, and I felt that it wasn't for me. I had a whole lot of tools and things that I used to be able to help myself come off them. I didn't feel myself. But, that frequency that anxiety operates on, it's a very high frequency, and it can be misdiagnosed. So it's about finding the right person and trusting our instincts as well, and trusting and listening to what's going on for ourselves. So, yeah.
Okay. So how do you feel about medication?
I think there's a place for it, 100%. I think that that as an integrative health coach, I believe in Eastern and Western medicine, and it has a place where we tend to, or it can be that it's an over-medicated society and very quick to prescribe as a magic pill, and it can help to get over the initial bump. I don't believe that it's a long-term solution. I think that we need to look at other approaches, whatever they might be. There's a whole lot of different approaches that we can take, including like our basics of health, our diet, what we're eating, moving our body, mindfulness stuff. There's plant-based medicines, CBD oils, there's a whole lot of things. So it's really just, sometimes it's necessary to get out of where we are in the immediate moment, but it's not a magic pill, and I don't feel it's always a long-term solution. But we're all different, we all have different ways of approaching our health and what works for us. So it's very individual.
Speaking of individual,
Yeah.
Are there certain personalities, in your opinion, that are more susceptible to anxiety than others? And I asked this question because I started learning about anxiety from people around me. And I've noticed that there are 3 people in particular who I just chose to observe when they mentioned to me that I've had attacks, and they've had attacks. And the one thing that I've noticed about these 3 people is that they all have this worrisomeness about them. They will create scenarios that don't exist, and I'm often like, but that's not happening, that's not happening. Like, why are we even delving so deeply into something that doesn't even exist? And I found that that's like the common thing between these 3 people. So I started wondering, is there a personality type or a kind of person who is, more susceptible, or anybody?
Yeah. There's sort of research that shows that some, individuals who are more highly emotional than others, can be more prone to anxiety. That sort of neurotic I would say frequency or patterns can tend to be more prone, maybe A-type personalities. I was definitely, or have been, an A-type personality, where I sort of, I operate, at that sort of very sort of fast pace and, fast thinking. But mostly that it's emotional, like, that we potentially more sensitive emotionally, and that's not a bad thing. Like, it's I think, with anxiety and some of the, if you want to call it labels, or, whatever diagnosis they are for sort of disorders, I think we tend to not want to feel, and we tend to not want to explore parts of ourselves, which there's sort of shadow self, light self, if you want to go deeper, but those parts of ourselves that we don't want to recognize. And it's not necessarily a bad thing when these symptoms or whatever are presenting, because it's a reason for us to look deeper and to go deeper and to really explore what's going on, and connect with that. So, yeah. but certainly a more emotional, you know, more highly emotional people can be more susceptible to it.
Okay, so based on my experiences, I tend to feel like being when you say highly emotional, does that mean that this person is able to tap into their emotions on a deeper level, or
probably more sensitive, you know, more sensitive, and they feel, you know, you know, I mean, I work intuitively. I work with my clients intuitively. I tend to have sort of downloads that come around health and things, and I've always been very tuned into that, you know, intuition and that more sensitive part of me. And some people just are, whether, you know, they're sort of connected with intuition or not. We all have it, but it's just a sensitivity, and there's nothing wrong with that either, you know, at all. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to ask a little bit more about that, because I feel like I'm one of those people who's highly emotional or more sensitive. And my whole life, people have been telling me, you're too sensitive, you're too sensitive. And I refuse to let go of that, because I always say my sensitivity benefits you at some point, because being a more sensitive person, you know, empathetic, it feels good when I can sympathize with you, when I can, you know, show empathy. So is this about,
I agree.
Is it about high sensitivity, or is it about high sensitivity but also not being able to hone your emotions or tap into your emotions, and things kind of just getting the best of you, like a person who can get angry really quickly, sad really quickly? Is it about getting sad really quickly, or is it about I let my sadness just run amok?
Yeah. Look, I mean, it is, like I said, a good thing to feel and to feel our emotions, because with that comes healing, and like feel it to heal it, you know, and that empathy. We do, it is good to manage our emotions and manage, you know, so that we can function, and we, you know, we sort of, you know, I like you, do let, you know, my emotions sort of, or I tap into them and I feel them, but you know, we also have to function, and we have to get on with things, and you know, not be, you know, a lot of the time we can wrap up our identity and who we are with our story, and you know, all the sort of stuff that we've been through and all of that, and we don't need to, because we, you know, we can move through stuff with the right help, or managing, you know, it's managing it, and there are different tools and ways that we can do that. So yeah.
Okay, I love feel it to heal it.
Yeah,
I love that. So let's talk about kids.
Yes.
I feel like today, I don't know if anxiety is something that's always been prevalent, or if it's more prevalent today. Perhaps it's always been prevalent, but we never talked about it. Or is it more prevalent today because the world is changing, and now kids are saying that they're anxious too?
Sure. Yeah. Look, we do live in a different world, you know, sort of looking, if you look over history, and a lot of the time, you know, in the past, it's either been underreported, or, you know, we have sort of this amazing, you know, social media sort of, you know, access to be, and media in general at a global level, and very fast paced. So, you know, we are a lot more aware. I think the dialogue is a lot more open now. You know, I think generations before tend to shove their emotions down, and it was a sign of weakness to talk about what was going on at a deeper level. You know, kids tend to not have, you know, if they're younger, they don't have the vocabulary or the ability to communicate what it is they're going through, or their emotions. So that can often lead to anxiety. You know, we've just come through a pandemic as well, where, you know, it's sort of, you know, teen anxiety, you know, coming through this last sort of 3 or 4 years, that fear-based. There's a lot going on for them, you know, in terms of even, you know, sexual sort of identity, you know, sort of gender identity. There's just a lot more, the pressure to perform. I think there's a lot more, and social media does heighten it in terms of, sort of that digital and that access to it all the time. We're a lot more fast paced. I think that, and kids are absorbing all of that, and they absorb it through us as well, energetically, and so if we don't get our stuff together, we can pass that on. And I think that, they are living in very different times. Yeah,
this is definitely not 1993, tell you that.
No.
So I was having a conversation this morning, and I found myself saying, in my head, and this is what's happening in your head. And I kept saying, in your head, in my head. But as I'm saying it, I'm kind of reminding myself that I don't even really connect the head with the mind all the way, right? I feel like the mind is the body. So when people have anxiety or any other mental disorders, I feel like we tend to think, this person is crazy in the head, or this person in the head. Where exactly does anxiety happen? Is this a head thing, or is it a body thing? Because I tend to think that the mind and the body is the same.
Yeah, and arguably it is the same. I think it starts as a sort of perceived threat, so it is in the brain. It's like it's a mental thing. When we sort of, like I talked about before, with that fight or flight. So we have our brain, but we also have our mind, which is our subconscious mind, and our conscious mind. And our subconscious mind is what drives probably 90% of our thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and actions. Our conscious, and it's our emotional space. And we have our conscious mind, which is all of our goals, all of our thinking. And often when the two don't connect, that's when there is friction. So we have a brain that starts it, and a sensory thing there. And then it's this biochemical, neurological thing that goes down into our body. We've got a thing behind our neck called the vagus nerve, which runs down into our gut. They talk about, or you talk about, gut, being thinking, sort of feeling. We feel funny in the tummy when we're stressed or anxious, so it's all this information that's going back and forward from our brain into our body. And then it also gets trapped in our nervous system and in our organs, in our muscles, in our cells. And our energy field as well. Yeah. So it is this whole, it's this whole thing that starts, it starts up here in our brain.
It sounds like a mess, but
that's why managing it is good. It is good. And we have the ability to master our mind. We really do. Like we have, whether it's looking at meditation, or coming into our breath, or foods we eat, hydration, moving our body. Like we have a state, Tony Robbins talks about that, and we have this state which is the language, how we talk to ourselves, what we focus on, and our body is the quickest way to move us out of our head. If you jump around in the moment, whatever, it's going to change it. So
I'm definitely
quite incredible.
You know what? I'm definitely one of those people who spend a lot of time contemplating. I love that you mentioned all of these chemical responses, because I remember watching a movie or a show, and something traumatic was happening to someone and they froze. And my son was like, why don't they just run? And I was explaining to them that sometimes your whole body goes into shock, right?
Absolutely.
It's just based on one tiny visual and your whole body shuts down. So I guess that lends to the chemical response that you just broke down. But also it seems like anxiety has to be a natural human response, though, to things.
It is, and it's a good thing. As I said, look, it's good to be stressed sometimes, and we're always going to have it. It's not like we're not going to ever have anxiety or stress. It's just the different levels and degrees. And like, it's good to have a bit of stress if you're about to jump on stage, or do a test. Or anxiety is good because it sort of actually is similar to the frequency of excitement. So when we can harness that and move through it, it's a good thing. It's just not allowing it to become bigger than us, and there are ways that we can manage that. So
okay. And I like that you said that there are ways that you can manage that, but are there times when people are experiencing things and they label it anxiety? You mentioned being misdiagnosed, but
Yeah.
can you name one or maybe two things that a person might be experiencing, but they label it as anxiety? And does it even matter if it's mislabeled in the moment?
No. Look, I mean, things like not like there's, a bunch of sort of things that present like lack of concentration, shortness of breath or shallowness of breath, not sleeping. That's a huge thing, our sleep-wake cycle, I mentioned lack of motivation, how we're holding our body, sweats, incessant, repetitive thought patterns that we have. They don't always have to be anxiety, but it's really just, it's knowing ourselves and knowing how we feel and how we're traveling, and if it's affecting our quality of life. And look, some people do have that need for certainty to be diagnosed or have that label, to make them feel comfortable or to maybe understand it a little bit more. But we don't all need that. And it's really just knowing ourselves and being connected with ourselves enough to know how to go forward or get the help, whether it's a coach, therapist, healer, just finding the right fit. I've found that subconscious work really has been amazing because it helps release our negative emotions and also limiting beliefs. We sort of have beliefs that we take on when we're young. So it can help clear all of that from trauma or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Are there any myths that we can bust today regarding anxiety? Because I do feel like because the conversation is happening so frequent, there has to be some type of fake news happening, especially on social media. I see it so much. And people link anxiety and depression a lot too. I feel I hear people say I have anxiety, but most of the time when I hear it, it's coupled with depression. Are those two things related? And what's some like a misconception that we can clear up today about anxiety?
So there are emotional and mental states. And as I mentioned, we can change our state. So depression is arguably we do anxiety or we do depression by our physiology, the way we breathe, certain, thoughts that we might be having. So it is, they're a state, but they're different. Anxiety operates at a bit more of an intense, higher frequency. Myths that we can bust is that it's our lot and that we're dealt with that and that's just how we are, and that we have to live with it because we don't, and we can change it. I think that that would be certainly one big one, that we're just an anxious person, and that's just how it is. Yeah.
I love when people feel stuck in something, then they're given hope. So absolutely. To the person who's tuned in today, you don't have to be anxious. You don't have to live with it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second, but let's jump into coping mechanisms. What are some things that, before you even go to a professional, what's something that you can do on your own if you know for sure this is definitely anxiety, I am either anxious or I am having an attack? What's something that, people who live with this day in, day out can do to get more in control?
So, I mean, I have a few, number one is definitely self-awareness and becoming as self-aware as we can, so that in the moment we can catch our thoughts and we can catch that pattern on repeat. Ways to do that: breath work, just, tuning in, being in the moment, slowing down, meditation, just, really becoming tuned into who we are. So in the moment, if you're catching your thoughts, challenge them. You're the boss of your mind. So, challenge, where are they coming from? What are your triggers? What's happening in that moment? And, you know, number 3 is certainly, and switching it around, like reframing things is really important too. So replacing it with something positive. We have that inner bully in our head, that negative self-talk, changing that around to something that's more positive and proactive. You know, physiology, if you're feeling that way, get out of your head into your body, move around, put on a song, you know, whatever, get outside, move away from the desk. Managing it via our, you know, the foods we eat. Gut health is really important because our brain and our gut are so connected. You know, gratitude, joy, what lights us up, happiness, go there. You know, there's sort of daily anchoring rituals that we can have. You know, for me, I meditate, I journal, and I work out. They're my 3, you know. There are supplements, there's a whole lot of things. And then the sort of last one would be to find somebody if you feel you want to tap into the resources that are available, you know, but we really can manage it in the moment. It's a consistent, you know, discipline and practice, but there are ways, and we don't always have to sort of seek professional help as the first option. It's more in the moment. Yeah.
So we're going to jump into the resources in a second, but I have one last question for you. With everything that you've experienced, September 11th, the fires, have you gotten to a place where you manage your anxiety, or have you eliminated it?
I have done a lot of work along the way, and in the last 4 years especially, I have done a lot of subconscious work. So I have cleared a lot of stacked trauma and stacked, you know, stuff that was sitting in my nervous system. I certainly have to manage it daily. You know, we're constantly thrown things, and it's about being able to navigate those ahead of time rather than just being at the mercy, you know, and effect. So it's something that I manage, and, you know, I do that daily. And if I'm not connected with myself and slowing things down, you know, my energy down, then I notice it, you know, for sure. And I don't deal with stuff as well. But, you know, the base stuff and that base, you know, those are events that happen to or happen in life, and our response to it, our emotional response to it, I've cleared a lot of that. But, you know, there's always stuff that that comes up. It's just really about being brave and being courageous, you know, and exploring that and managing it too. Yeah.
Well, the world is going to be the world.
It is. Yeah.
And humans are going to be humans.
Yes.
So speaking of humans, how can a human who wants to maybe join your 6-week one-on-one program get in touch with you, and what does that program look like?
Thank you. Yes. So I work one-on-one. It's a 6-week program called The Last 5, and it's emotional healing, well-being, and weight loss. And it really is about the fact that, you know, the weight that we carry is not always on our body. It does incorporate food and things like that too. But it works with the subconscious mind and, you know, my other sort of tips and tricks and tools that I have. And they can get in touch with me. I have my social media. I'm on Instagram. It's Sascha Jones, my name _ I also have a Facebook group, which is called the Startup Lounge. So just, you can DM me, and I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah.
And your website?
I have a website. It's a little outdated. So I've got my VA working on that. So yeah, my social media, you can go to my website. It's just a bit old, so it's not reflective of where I'm at right now. Yeah. Okay,
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you.
Much. Thank you so much. So we are going to jump into the next segment. Whenever I feel like the information I've been taking in has been a little bit heavy, I like to take a second to breathe. So I just need a second to just pivot into the SOA Q&A. So I'm just going to breathe really quickly. Just a deep breath. Okay, so our next segment, the SOA Q&A, our producer, Shot of Adrenaline, will ask, it's so funny, adrenaline. We're talking about fight and flight, and here he comes with these questions. So he is going to ask us a few introspective questions that we will answer. Please make sure that you repeat the question before answering. And I think we're ready to go. Are we ready? what do I think people of the future will have the most anxiety about? I believe it's already starting. People are very nervous about machines taking over and wiping us out. I'm not certain that that exact scenario will happen. I'm not certain, but I do believe the anxiety around that will go up.
What are some do's and don'ts for me to get through my day? Do have my morning ritual where I wake up and I have some time to connect with myself. You know, I meditate, journal, work out, have my coffee. You know, be self-aware, do be kind, do be grateful, do tap into creativity and joy and what lights me up. Don't put my stuff on other people when I'm feeling a bit wobbly. Don't not listen, or, you know, I really do try to listen and have that connection and exchange, especially with my partner. And don't get overwhelmed, or it's easy to say, but just prioritize things that are important and keep it simple. You know, that's how I get through my day. You know, it's all going to be okay. You know, keep it simple, slow it down. Yeah.
I love the part about keeping it simple, because I feel like we complicate everything for no reason, don't we?
We do.
How do I get a grip on myself when triggered? It depends on the trigger, but I'm going to give you one example on how I get a grip on. A lot of times we are triggered because we did not listen to what was actually said or pay attention to what was actually done. I definitely had a moment when I got a text message and I looked at my phone and I thought, wait, what? Wait, hold on, no. But I decided to slow down, step away from the phone, and not respond at all. And a few hours later, when I felt calmer, I went back and read the message, and it's not even what I thought it was.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't even what I thought I read. I misread it. So a lot of times it's really, for me, it's slowing down. Is this what was really said? What was the intention? Am I misconstruing the message or the action? So that's one of them. I'm still working myself, y'all. Still working.
In what ways do I think society expects too much from adults? I think that we have this hustle culture and hustle mentality, and that we have to be on 24/7, you know, and I feel that high level of performance and not enough time, and that sort of busy, rushed mentality is something that, you know, it's very prevalent. And I personally don't buy into it. You know, I can get caught up in it. I'm a work in progress as well. But I feel that hustle culture and, you know, squeezing the most out of sort of time, you know, in a negative way is a lot. And really, if we can just take a breath, take a moment, look at what's important to us, you know, slow it down so that we're more efficient and we can speed up that way. That's something that, yeah, I feel it's, you know, it's certainly something that I live by. Yeah.
That's
not buying into the hustle. You know, it doesn't mean you can't be successful. It doesn't mean you can't make a mozza, all of that stuff, but it's just not buying into the hustle. Yeah.
What advice would I give a young person about to enter into adulthood? Turn back. That's it.
Don't do it. I love it.
Don't come here. They're gonna hustle you and grind you to death. No, but seriously, you know, what you think, and they're not gonna listen. What you think you know now, I promise you, that's not it. It's but when you hit your 30s, you look back at your 20s and think, I really didn't know anything. When you hit 40, you're like, I really didn't know anything. I haven't gotten to 50 yet, which, you know, I think I'm going to say the same thing. But as you grow, leave space for learning and acknowledge that I don't know anything and it's okay. And I'm open to learning. And I think that's what keeps you from suffering.
What skills from my professional life have helped me evolve personally? Skills like not being afraid of our feelings, you know, and really being okay with where we're at, and, you know, not being afraid to dig deeper. And I will say one big thing, which I always talk to my clients about, and it's helped me, is practicing gratitude. Like, it's big, you know, where we focus and where we put our attention is where our energy goes. And that's been a huge thing for me, just being really grateful and happy with what I have in front of me, because that does create this amazing energy, you know, that brings more of that, you know, into our life. So it's been big. Yeah.
I love the gratitude part. That's my jam too.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, so our third and last segment, happy habit. So what is your happy habit? What's one thing that you either do daily or you do occasionally that brings you joy?
I dance. I put music on and I dance, and I just love it. It's something that just shifts my thinking, my feeling, you know, and it really brings me joy. And it's, you know, it's almost a spiritual thing, but I love it. I love me. I've always loved music, and I just love moving my body to music. So,
what are you dancing to lately?
Oh, lots of different things. I have very broad, you know, music taste. I love hip hop and old school hip hop. I love, you know, even like contemporary Harry Styles, Lizzo. Like, you know, I've got a pretty broad. I love rock. I love country. So whatever kind of floats my boat in the moment. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Not only for joining me, but definitely for doing what you do. It is absolutely needed and necessary. And thanks to everyone who has tuned in and rocked out with us thus far. I hope that you heard at least one thing that helps you. And if you are dealing with anxiety, consider tapping in with Sascha. Sascha, your name is a tongue twister. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the sh and the J. Sascha Jones. I have to say it slowly, because if I say Sascha Jones, my mouth feels like it's doing too much. So tap into Miss Sascha, and I hope that you walk away with something beneficial. I think you will, because if you're suffering, if you don't understand what's happening, I do think that tapping in with a resource is the best thing that you can possibly do. So make sure you do that. Please say your Instagram or your Facebook one more time before we head out.
So it's Sascha Jones, Sascha Jones _ is my Instagram, and the Startup Lounge is my Facebook group. So you can find me there.
Definitely. Awesome.
Thank you, Nola, so much. It was such an honor, and I love what you do too. It's so important.
Thank you. Thank you. We're all done. See y'all later.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Nola Ro Experience Podcast. Created and hosted by Nola Ro. Produced by Take Action Media. Theme song by Mr. Melee. Sponsored by The Hills Restaurant, Brooklyn, New York. Listen to us on all podcast platforms and follow us on social media at the Nola Ro Experience Podcast. Visit thenolaroexperiencepodcast.com and connect with us via email at talkwithnola@gmail.com.